protective mothers who do anything for their children.
Both appeared to have a lot in common, kids the same age, family people.
You can call them helicopter parents or tiger moms. They both had very hands-on parenting styles.
But when they turn their defensive instincts on one another, the results are deadly.
There was a lot of hatred between these two families. There is yelling, screaming. He says, she stabbed her, she stabbed her.
And investigators are left to determine who's to blame in the suburban feud gone wrong.
It was just like, how did this come about?
Both of these moms seem capable of just about anything.
Wednesday, April 27th, 2005. School has just let out in the Cleveland, Ohio suburb of Euclid when police receive a call about a domestic disturbance in progress.
I was in my office and we monitor all the calls through a scanner. At that time, we heard that there was a big fight on Crystal Avenue.
According to the caller, all hell had broken loose at the house next door to him. 15 people had engaged in a fight. They were literally outside, duking it out.
Officers are dispatched to handle the altercation, but while they are en route, a second and more urgent call comes in.
There is yelling, screaming. The 911 operator can't hear most of what he's saying, but is getting enough down to when he says, she stabbed her, she stabbed her.
When the police got there, the scene was total chaos. A dozen men and women throwing punches at each other, literally a battle between two families.
I saw one lady laying down by the driveway. Looked like there was some type of problem going on with her. There was someone else over top of her, and all the other people were just milling around.
My sister talking about she can't breathe. I'm lifting up her shirt. I'm not a paramedic. I don't know what to do. I don't know whether to hold her chest or whatever. I just see the blood coming out, and I just see her eyes just going blank.
She needed medical attention right away, or else she was going to basically bleed out.
Police clear a path for EMTs to treat the unconscious woman. It appears she's been stabbed several times, but she's not the only victim.
As the EMTs were putting her into the ambulance, they noticed that the woman helping her was also bleeding.
I didn't know I was stabbed until the EMT said, take off your jacket, let me check your body. And they checked and saw that I was stabbed in my back too. So I get in the ambulance and I'm riding to the hospital, and I look down the street and the ambulance with my sister just stopped on the street. I'm like, what did they stop for? I guess she had stopped breathing.
The wounded woman identifies herself as 29-year-old Christina Barkley. The unconscious woman is her little sister, 20-year-old Vanessa McMorrick.
Vanessa was an irritating little girl growing up. She followed me around everywhere, just irritating and tattleteller. But as she got older, me and her got closer, you know. She was everybody's best friend. She's like the glue that kept everybody together.
Christina's daughter, Diamond, was especially close to her aunt.
I could talk to my auntie Vanessa about anything. Whenever I had a problem in school or with my mom or anything, she was the person I can go to and talk to. Anytime we threw parties, she was the one that planned it and was the first one there. She loved getting her hair done. So she was over our house all the time because my mother did her hair. She was just beautiful inside and out.
Few things were more important to Vanessa than family. So after high school, she began making plans to start one of her own.
She worked in a clothing store in nearby Cleveland, and she was able to get an apartment. Shortly after, she met a man named Robert. They started dating, and not too long after they started dating, she learned she was pregnant. Vanessa's big sister, Christina, already had children, but they both ended up being pregnant at the same time, so it was just one more thing that they could bond over as sisters.
They both had mood swings out of this world. during the entire pregnancy. She was there almost every single day, and I'll never forget when she actually went into labor. My mom was right there.
She had her baby 2 months before I did. She didn't have that many friends. It was just family. It was just us all day long. If she wasn't at my house, she was at my other sister's house. We were just together all the time.
The extended family included Christina's husband Michael and their 5 children. Their home on Crystal Avenue was always bustling with activity.
Diamond was 12. Jonathan was 13. Zariana, she was about 5. And Zamian, he was 3. And Ozias was like 4 months old. He was a little newborn baby.
Between their kids, aunts, uncles, cousins, family coming over, it was just a very busy place.
So busy, in fact, that when their new neighbors, the Bergers, moved in next door, Christina barely even noticed.
Ashley Berger was, I believe, 32 years old and had moved to Crystal Avenue in June of 2005. She had 4 children. She lived there with her common-law husband.
I knew of them. I knew it was a mom. I knew it was a guy that lived with her, and I knew she had beautiful kids. I was in my own little world with my own little family. I didn't need no new friends.
Both families seemed content to live their lives in peace. But just a year later, their neighborhood would become a battleground. While Christina and Vanessa are rushed to the hospital, police try to defuse the situation between the 2 families.
Crystal Avenue is a really decent area to raise a family. It's kind of a bedroom community.
These are 2 suburban families that have gotten into this fight. I mean, these aren't gang members.
Coming up, investigators learn the history between the 2 families and discover how young love sparked a dangerous feud.
Yeah, he had a little crush on me, and I kind of, told him off.
Christina Barkley and her sister Vanessa are being rushed to the hospital after a brawl with their neighbors left both of them stabbed. But before an investigation can begin, authorities first have to pry the 2 families apart.
The screaming and yelling and invectives and swearing and everything that was going on, I mean, it was at its peak then. So they had to calm everything down. The way they do that is they put people in different areas where they can't, rile or incite other people.
While officers try to keep the peace, Detective Ken Kosinski is assigned to the case.
I had to talk to, hopefully, both victims that were up there and get their statement on what happened. When I got to the hospital, Vanessa they're working on her. She's unable to speak or anything.
Vanessa was stabbed 7 times. One of those stabs went through the lung and through the pulmonary artery, which essentially caused her to bleed out. She was also stabbed in the left arm, which severed the muscle, which rendered her arm useless.
While they're operating on Vanessa, detectives speak to Christina to find out what happened.
I went over, talked with her, and she gave me a statement on what had occurred and everything. And she said that she didn't even know she was stabbed. She thought that she just got hit in the back with something. She was a mess. She had the stab wound in her back, scratch marks on her face, but she was able to talk and she was in pretty good health, considering.
Christina is able to identify her attacker immediately. She says it's Ashley Berger, her neighbor, that came after them with a knife.
Christina says this wasn't just a random act of violence. There's been a history of tension between their 2 families, and it all started with a case of unrequited love.
Christina had a daughter named Diamond, and Ashley had a son named Deontay who was about the same age.
So our kids went to the same school. They was in Euclid Middle School. They 12 or 13, but this was a big kid. He didn't look his age. Neither did his cousin. Neither one of them looked their age. Meanwhile, I got 2 little skinny kids, that was way smaller than him.
According to Christina, the trouble began when Ashley's teenage son Deontay made it clear he wanted Christina's daughter Diamond to go out with him.
We were in the same grade. I guess, yeah, he had a little crush on me, and I didn't like boys, so of course I kind of, told him off. Like, I don't want that, I'm not ready for that.
She's 12. She ain't about to date nobody. So he can crush all he want, but it's not gonna happen. So after she turned him down, this is when everything started happening.
So, of course, then he got upset and didn't want to play with us anymore and stuff like that. Next thing we know, he started picking on us.
He would bully Jonathan, my son, and Diamond, my daughter. Every day, coming home from school, going to school, he would just do really horrible stuff to my kids.
This one day, we were at the bus stop waiting for the bus, and he took a snowball, it wasn't even a snowball, it was more like ice, and he threw it at my face.
Christina tells police that's when she finally decided to confront Ashley Berger about her son.
I go knock on her door, and I tried to talk to her. It wasn't a good conversation. I can't even recall what she said, but it wasn't good.
The boy's mother just did not believe that he was capable of that.
Since Ashley refused to do anything, Christina took matters into her own hands.
My mom did go to the school and talk to the teachers. She actually tried to get us both out of the school and go to a different school. They wouldn't do it.
I talked to the principal. All he can say is keep them away from each other. They ride the same bus. So there was no way of keeping these kids away from each other, especially if we lived next door.
With the school declining to intervene, the bad blood between the families continued to grow.
There was an incident back in February of 2005. Ashley punched Christina in the face.
Her son came home one day from school and told his mother that my kids was bullying him. She came over, and I couldn't talk to her at that moment because I was with the baby. I said, well, hold on, I'll come over to your house in a minute. So I go over into her house. She didn't answer the door. So I see her significant other walking down the street.
So Christina goes over and starts to talk to Ashley's boyfriend about the problems. Ashley did not like that one bit.
She came out and said, get away from my man. Why are you talking to my man? You want him or something? And then hit me in my face with my 2-year-old in my hand. Yes, she did. My 2-year-old fell to the concrete and hit his head on the ground. I'm sorry, world, but
The feud just gets worse from there.
More incidents, more bullying. Christina said that Ashley's family would yell at them every time they were outside.
calling the police don't help. Going to the school didn't help. Talking to that parent didn't help. My plan was that summer, I was going to move. I was out of there. And Nessa was moving with me. We was about to get a house together.
Coming up, the neighborhood feud once again erupts into violence.
All I remember is my mom and my aunt were kind of like being pulled by the hair, and I'm literally just standing there crying.
In Euclid, Ohio, 20-year-old mother Vanessa McMorrick is undergoing emergency surgery after being stabbed 7 times. Meanwhile, her sister Christina is giving a statement to police.
When I spoke to Christina, I expected the worst. I expected screaming, crying, unable to speak. She was relatively calm about the whole thing. She was very matter-of-factly, this is what happened, this is what I want to get down, this is what I want to tell you.
April 27th in 2005, 3 days before my birthday. My birthday is April 30th. Getting ready to have a sleepover. My aunt came over to We were going to go shopping to get me a birthday outfit because that same weekend that we had the sleepover, we were going to have a party for me.
To go pick up Vanessa from her house downtown in Cleveland. And me and her, we went to the grocery store, went grocery shopping, and then I dropped off my nephews at the bus stop so they can walk Diamond and Jonathan home so they wouldn't be picked with.
She warned them to go straight home and to not start anything with Ashley's son.
But when they got back, Ashley and her family were looking to start a fight.
As we pulling up into the driveway, we just see her and 3 carloads of people. And these people just got out the car. And then as we're walking out the car and her boyfriend's on the porch, he jumps over his porch and get in my sister's face. He just saying everything but the right words to her. He is really cussing my little sister out.
So it began, they going back and forth, and it just escalated from there.
Despite Christina's earlier attempt to keep their sons apart, the Bergers claimed Jonathan had attacked Deontay.
You're just cussing her out. I mean, why you had them kids try to jump my son or something, but nobody tried to jump your son. I went over there and tried to break it up, get away from my sister's face, and he starts pushing me.
The other house started emptying out, and then you had all these people all over the front lawn, wrestling, fighting, hitting, biting, whatever they were doing.
All I remember is my mom and my aunt were kind of being pulled by the hair, and I'm literally just standing there crying. I don't know what to do, and they're just all fighting.
Christina says that's when it must have happened.
I don't even know when or where my sister got stabbed. I can't even recall when I got stabbed. All I know is at the end of it, Ashley Berger done stabbed my sister. I'm like, she got a knife. And it's 20 people piled around me.
Christina said that Ashley ran back inside, but the fight kept on going. She had no idea how badly Vanessa was hurt.
I see my sister laying on the ground. I see my husband, he's on the phone calling 911. Meanwhile, the kids are in the house. Her son is there. Her 1-year-old son is there. You just hear kids just crying and crying from our side. And my sister's just laying on the ground. She's getting heavy in my arms. I couldn't hold her no more.
With Vanessa still in surgery, detectives returned to Crystal Avenue hoping to verify Christina's story.
Christina was certain that Ashley was the one who stabbed them, but her memory of the events was not entirely clear. She even says that she had the knife at one point, so at that point they don't know anything for sure. By the time detectives had gotten to the scene, the officers had calmed everyone down. That was a huge task. There were at least 15 people involved in a knockdown, drag-out fight.
Inside, investigators find their suspect, Ashley Berger.
We didn't know for sure if it was her, but we had a real good idea that it was because everyone was pointing at her. The whole opposite clan was pointing at her as the person that did the stabbing. James Bruning was one of the officers that responded to the scene. He went in there, asked where Ashley was, and people in the house said that she's in the kitchen. So he went in the kitchen area, confronted Ashley there, saw a knife in the sink where she was standing at. He asked her, that's the knife that she used to stab this person? She goes, I don't know.
So unfortunately, Ashley didn't elaborate, and all they could do was take her into custody.
We took photos of the inside of the house, where we found the knife at. We took it, bagged it, and then we were going to send it to Bureau of Criminal Investigation out in Richfield, Ohio. They do some follow-up investigations. They do testing on forensics and stuff like that. We would want somebody to test it that has better equipment than we have.
It will take several days for the test results to come back. And in the meantime, police are finding it difficult to get a clear picture of what happened from the other participants.
Basically, it was conflicting statements as to what happened, who was involved, who got stabbed, who was doing the stabbing, and everything like that. So at that point in time, we decided, all right, we're going to make everyone fill out a statement form, take everybody into the police station.
Coming up, investigators discover there's more to the story than what they've been told so far.
From the Berger's perspective, it was Christina and her family that was the problem.
There were 34 reported incidents.
It's been a little over an hour since 20-year-old Vanessa McMorrick and her sister Christina were rushed to the hospital with multiple stab wounds. Their neighbor, Ashley Berger, has been named as the assailant, but police still have no proof.
When we got everybody to the police station, we separated everyone because we didn't want anyone to start fighting or wrestling. We had a couple interview rooms, and so that's where they sat. And most of the people really weren't too loud after they were at the police station. I think they realized they're just going to have to make the statements and submit to whatever happens after that.
With so many people to interview, the police decide to divide and conquer. They start to collect statements from one family to compare to statements of the other.
And what Ashley's family told police was very different from what they'd heard so far.
Ashley Berger was a 32-year-old female who had moved to Crystal Avenue in 2005. She had 4 children, and she lived there with Matt, who was her boyfriend, and the father of 2 of the children.
She had no criminal history. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had a kind of quiet, calm demeanor. She just didn't seem like the kind of person who was capable of this kind of violence.
Ashley would say that she really didn't want bad blood. They were her next-door neighbors. She was happy to have a nice place to live with her children.
From the Berger's perspective, it was Christina and her family that was the problem. Police records reflected that Ashley had called the department several times to seek assistance. Ashley claimed it was her son that was being bullied by Christina's kids and not the other way around.
Ashley claimed that after she reported the harassment, Christina became more and more combative.
In February of 2005, where Ashley punched Christina in the face over some dispute between the children. And she actually admitted to it, but indicated she felt threatened.
To hear Ashley tell it, it was Christina's family that were the violent ones. They were the ones shouting threats and slurs.
And those threats soon escalated into acts of vandalism.
Ashley stated that in March, she placed these stick-type markers along her property line so that there would be a clear demarcation. She wanted to keep Christina's kids off of her property.
Ashley filed a police report claiming that her son saw Christina's husband kick those markers down.
Euclid is a community of about 50,000 people. They have a very good police force. They've responded to these incidents. They certainly want to try to resolve any sort of conflicts that occur. The officers had spoke to both families, left, and as far as they knew, everything had settled down.
Police may have considered the matter resolved, but the truth was, neither mother seemed willing to back down.
Investigators were looking at these incident reports, and it just demonstrated that there was so much back and forth between these two families. None of it was shedding any light on what really happened. What these reports did tell them was that both of these mothers were extremely overprotective of their children, and they would be willing to do just about anything.
Ashley's family tells detectives things got so bad, she even tried to get a restraining order against Christina's family.
The indication was that the prosecutor would be in contact and they were going to try to mediate this or try to work with them to try to resolve these sort of conflicts that were going on. For whatever reason, they didn't seem to want to compromise. Each stood their ground, and that's the way it was going to be.
The only thing both families seem to agree on is what caused the fight. But investigators still don't have a clear account of what happened. And the one person who might be able to tell them isn't talking.
The only two people who were involved in the fight that hadn't given statements yet were Vanessa and Ashley. Since they had Ashley in custody, they decided to make another run at her. But before they could do that, they got some bad news.
I received the call that Vanessa had passed. She had bled out.
Once they was done stitching me up, the doctor came in and told me there was nothing he can do. She passed away. I couldn't even see her body. I just had to leave the hospital.
This meant that there was no longer an assault charge, and Ashley was potentially looking at a first-degree murder charge.
Both families are immediately informed of Vanessa's death.
We lived right down the street from the police station, like right down the street. And I'll never forget it. When she came home, me and my mom sat on the stairs and we just talked. She said my aunt had passed away, and we all just broke down. And it's never been the same since.
The other family was kind of taken back, basically. I think they were a little shocked at the whole thing, too. I don't think they expected what happened to happen.
But Ashley Berger has the most surprising reaction of all.
When they told her at the Euclid Police Department that Vanessa had succumbed to her wounds, she blurted out, "I didn't mean to do it."
She goes, "Oh my God, I didn't mean to kill her."
It's the first time that she said anything to them since they picked her up. Whether she meant it or not, it amounts to an admission of guilt, so they arrest her.
We had her processed through the jail, photographs, fingerprints, and all that.
Coming up, Ashley drops another bombshell.
She was 5 months pregnant at the time.
Ashley Berger has just implicated herself in the stabbing death of 20-year-old Vanessa McMorrick. And Euclid police already have statements from the victim's family confirming Ashley was the one who did it.
I spoke with a few people from the Berger side. I don't believe any of them had mentioned anything about the stabbing, but they knew exactly what happened because they were the ones screaming for Ashley to get back in the house. So they knew. Everyone understood. Everyone saw. Except, if I don't say anything, maybe it didn't happen.
At that point, detectives are convinced that Ashley probably just got fed up with Christina and her family, and she just snapped. They're looking to get a full statement from Ashley to wrap up the investigation.
However, after police hear what Ashley has to say, they realize there's more to the story.
The relationship between Ashley Berger and Christina Barkley was massively deteriorating over several months. Things just kept getting worse.
There'd been threats, there'd been hatred because of the police being called. There'd been things said, well, if your son stopped picking on my son, he's younger and he's smaller and everything. He's trying to do the right thing, come home, not get in a fight.
Ashley doesn't deny the bad blood between them, but she claims Christina and Vanessa were the ones who took things too far.
Ashley told police that she tried every legal means at her disposal to protect her children, but she drew the line when they threatened the life of her unborn child.
She was 5 months pregnant at the time of the homicide.
According to Ashley, Christina's family not only knew she was pregnant, they used it as another way to intimidate her.
Ashley didn't look pregnant with a big belly at all, but when you live next door to somebody, you tend to know their business.
The two sisters had allegedly threatened to stomp the baby out of her.
Vanessa kept saying, "I'm going to kick that baby out of you."
The fights between the two families had escalated to the point that she was afraid they weren't just threats anymore.
So when Christina's family came into her yard that day, Ashley was determined to protect her baby, no matter what.
On April 27, 2005, around 3 p.m., Ashley Berger called police to say that Christina's nephews were harassing her children.
Ashley claimed that Christina sent her two older nephews to the bus stop to harass her sons and basically threatened to beat him up. The police came and left, but Ashley was so worried she wanted to stay at her parents' house.
But before her parents arrived to pick her up, Ashley says Christina and Vanessa found out she'd called the police on their nephews.
Every time that there was a confrontation or fights on the bus or whatever, Ashley would call the police. This enraged Vanessa and Christina. How dare you call the police on my son, my nephew, they didn't like the fact that police were called to break up fights between school kids.
Christina and Vanessa were ready to have it out with Ashley, but about that time, Ashley's parents got there.
Ashley claims that as her parents arrived, Vanessa and Christina's family started screaming at them. At that point, Ashley's boyfriend, Matt, intervened.
Christina and Vanessa got out of the van and tried to break up the fight between Matt and the nephew. Then the other house started emptying out, and then you had all these people all over the front lawn, wrestling, fighting, hitting, fighting.
Fearing the worst, Ashley grabbed a knife from the kitchen.
Vanessa and Christina came up on the porch, and she just did everything she could to protect what was standing right behind her, her small children, and right inside her, the baby.
Ashley comes busting out of the house with this knife and starts flailing the knife all over the place. Christina grabs the knife, and now she's wrestling with Ashley. Ashley's got a hold of her hair. Somewhere in this melee, Vanessa got stabbed.
If what Ashley says is true, she was acting in self-defense. But there is little evidence to corroborate her story.
Other than the next-door neighbor that made the initial 911 call, none of the other neighbors were willing to come forward and help the police.
The neighbors didn't want to talk. They were afraid. All they kept on saying was, it's just a mess. I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to be dragged into this. And that was basically that, or they wouldn't return the calls. You'd leave your card, make a phone call to them, nothing. It was just, that was it.
When the test results came back from the knife found in Ashley's kitchen, they're not much help.
There were no fingerprints on the knife. The blood, there was no real blood on it. So it was washed off and it was clean.
There's no doubt that Ashley had the knife. Ashley confessed, but the police have to figure out if it was self-defense or murder.
The strengths were the admission, the finding of the knife immediately afterwards with blood in the sink, the admission I didn't mean to do it when Ashley found out that Vanessa had died. Probably the weaker part is dealing with statements. Everybody had a different story. Each family sort of had their own take on what occurred and what didn't occur. So really we looked at the evidence. That pool of blood in front of the living room window was very telling.
We had enough at that point in time to charge her. There was no more investigation needed. There was nothing else to do.
Prosecutors decide to take the case to a grand jury.
What the state did when they took it to the grand jury, they knew that they had a tough case, and so they had an indictment for voluntary manslaughter and one for involuntary manslaughter.
The defense certainly cross-examined the witnesses for the state cross-examines the witnesses for the defense, and the jury listens to it and makes a determination of credibility.
The grand jury ultimately agrees with the prosecution's case against Ashley Berger. On June 2, 2005, they bring indictments for murder and 4 counts of felonious assault.
Ultimately, they decided there was enough evidence to support the charges, so it got scheduled to go to trial.
Coming up, the two families face off for the last time in court.
A woman shouted, "In court, I'm gonna kill Ashley's baby." "32-year-old Ashley Berger has been charged with the murder of Vanessa McMorrick. But since she is 5 months pregnant, her lawyers argue to postpone the trial.
The court agreed and allowed her to be kept on house arrest until after she gave birth.
On August 29th, 4 months after stabbing her neighbors, Ashley gives birth to a baby girl. And another 3 months later, her trial finally begins.
Even though it had almost been a year, emotions were still running hot between the two families. Deputies were on high alert, constantly monitoring the situation, trying to make sure that another fight didn't erupt. Prosecutors described Ashley as a woman driven by hatred. Ashley had harassed Christina and Vanessa for several months before stabbing them in a fit of rage.
The state points to numerous police records of Ashley's aggressive behavior, as well as the medical reports regarding her victims' injuries.
My sister was stabbed 7 times. She was stabbed, one of them in her arm. She couldn't even move the arm to even save herself.
There were some defensive wounds, but it was the one death stab, if you will, was 3 inches deep. It was well into the chest cavity.
Prosecutors also show the jury photos of the large pool of blood found just outside Ashley's front window.
Ashley was inside when the fight began, but Vanessa was stabbed outside. That meant Ashley made a conscious choice to fight these 2 women.
I don't think that there was any question about it being self-defense. Ashley was in the house. How could she claim self-defense when she was removed from everything? She came out of the house with the knife, with the intent to hurt somebody with it.
But the defense insists that Ashley was acting in self-defense, and they believe they can prove it.
They used statements given by Ashley's family to the police to support their claim that Christina and Vanessa had been the ones who actually started the fight.
Matt Macenti came there. Shortly before he got there, there had been a fight between Ashley's son and Vanessa's son. They were picking on him, and he had, I believe, 2 sisters with him. And they get there, and Matthew gets out of the car, and here comes Vanessa. Now, mind you, nothing happens on the property of Christina, not one thing. Everything is on the property of Ashley.
Testimony about Christina and Vanessa's threats to kick the baby out of Ashley were vital to the defense's case. It demonstrated that Ashley had reason to fear for her life and the life of her unborn child.
Ashley's attorneys asked the jury to see her not as a murderer, but as a mother, desperate to protect her child.
Ashley claimed she ran in the house to get a kitchen knife just to scare the other group of people, and things got out of hand.
The intent to stab and kill, I think it was more of an intent to frighten away and leave me and my kids alone and cut this out.
On November 21st, 2005, after 3 days of deliberations,